Hey guys, I know I'm normally long-winded. I'm going to try to do this one pretty quick. We'll see how that goes. All I want to talk about here is the Proverbs 31 man. Okay, now we've all heard about the Proverbs 31 woman, right? And that has significant value, right? Because this woman is empowered. This woman is powerful. This woman is strong. She's fit. She's financially stable. She makes wise investments. She builds this house and anyway, I don't want to talk too much about that because that's been kind of beaten to death in most circles. And I think that women should continue to look at that as a model, and it is a good model when interpreted in a healthy way, okay? I'm not going to get into this whole whether you interpreted it right or wrong. What I want to talk about is whether or not we interpreted it in a way that was healthy in what it produced in our lives. So when we start in Proverbs 31, verse 10 starts talking about the Proverbs 31 woman, right? And within this, we have some subtext about the husband. But when we really see the husband kind of emerge within the passage, we see it in verse 23. In verse 23, it says her husband is respected at the city gates, right? I'm reading a different version here. I'm going to read it this way. We can put it back into American English. But her husband is respected at the city gate where he takes a seat amongst the elders of the land. Okay? So as we talk about the husband, okay, the husband, no matter what translation you delve into, is a very prominent figure, a well-known figure within the land, okay? This man has a reputation that has probably taken him a long time, years of investment in keeping his character good in front of people, and he has taken this time to really establish, wealth, reputation, and to sit in the place where people are coming in and coming out of the city, the most trafficked place where people would want to see people that represent the wise, the noble, the strong, the warriors, the heroes, the kings. This is kind of that place of honor where he sits, okay? And in this place of honor, he's able to sit here, right? Not worrying about things at home, because he knows that he has a fully capable wife who has been empowered with all of his influence, all of his wealth, and then she took it and turned it into even greater wealth, right? Or he may have started poor and she may have actually just been a very wise investor and made him rise to that level. Either way, I prefer to think about, on one hand, I prefer to think about the fact that he was kind of self-made and had this reputation already, because what he does, he takes his money, he takes his reputation, and basically he gives her the reins completely to, have the power to either make or break him, okay? So she's taking this wealth and investing it. So now, let's say this guy, he's like, I've built this up. I've spent all this time, like, getting all these things in order so that I could invest it in her. Now, if she does poor investments, that's a bad, reflection on me, or it brings me down in the sense of what I can do, okay? But he takes that risk, and that's really where I'm trying to go with this, is he believes in her, okay? He has confidence in her. Now, did she earn that confidence? Yes. Is she still ongoing earning that confidence? Yes, okay? Now, on the other hand, saying that he may have been poor or, somewhere in that middle ground, and she began to invest and actually make him prosper is also a very cool way to look at the story, because that's just going to make him all the more, infatuated with this woman, okay? This relationship is awesome when you start looking at what she does and what he does, okay? So it goes back into the things that she's doing as he's sitting in the gate. These are the things that he's telling people about her. He's technically the author of this passage, and he's expressing, like, this woman is great, this woman is amazing, this woman, like, you should see the things that she's doing. Like, we're here in this place that's supposed to be of this great reputation, and like, this is where, this is where stuff happens. But I want you to know what's happening at home, because that's what's blowing my mind, right? So he praises her. He praises her in the gates of the city, in the place where everybody's coming in and coming out. And I would attribute that furthermore to the idea that in Ephesians it talks about your body is not your own. Now, we've heard that used in such a manipulative and abusive way to say, basically, you are no longer your own, and now you're a slave, and now you're at somebody else's mercy, and they can do whatever they want to your body, use your body, abuse you, and all these teachings that are very, very toxic. And again, I'm not talking about what is right or wrong in the interpretation. I'm talking about what's healthy or unhealthy in the interpretation, okay? Because our minds are not perfect, okay? Even when you have the Spirit, your mind is not perfect. Even Paul prophesied incorrectly while in the Spirit, and Paul was pretty good at what he did, debatably, but a lot of people will place a lot of honor on Paul, and if Paul could miss it in interpreting the Spirit in real time, how much more can we miss it interpreting a book, okay? So the book might be infallible, the book might be perfect, and there's actually evidence that points to a lot of things that collaborate, like how impressive this book is, that all these different books written in all these different time periods, written in all these different countries, under different occupations, and conquests and different things that were happening, that they all, from all these unrelated places and parts and cultures, still has so much consistency that there's something there, okay? But what we don't want to do is get so locked into using the idea that this book is perfect to say that our interpretation is perfect, because our interpretations are so far from perfect. So look at whether it's a healthy, fruit-producing outcome when we interpret it, or whether it's toxic and maybe we thought it was good, but it's kind of leading us into more and more darkness. What is producing life? And sometimes struggle produces life. Sometimes things need to be cut back so you can have the greater harvest. So this is something that takes time, process, and maturity to work out on your own without other people meddling, all right? But seeking counsel is good. Iron sharpens iron. We should be talking about things, but not insisting on our own way, okay? We should be insisting upon love is good, hate is bad, okay? And then we need to kind of pick apart and dissect what those things are in maturity at times, because sometimes people will say killing people is wrong no matter what, and other times they would say if you're a police officer or a soldier or this or that it's inevitable and it's actually something that makes you a hero, okay? So there are areas where love needs to be further defined in maturity, perspective, and coming back to what I'm talking about, because that's an entirely different subject, okay? Not telling you what you have to do, but I am talking about interpretations should bring about life and healthy things, okay? So in Ephesians, it talks about your body is not your own. We have a current teaching that is very toxic, very misleading, and very empowering to abusive spouses that will use scripture to beat their other spouse into subjection and submission and oppression. We don't want that. So my interpretation, tying it back here, is when it says your body is not your own, and we come back to this Proverbs 31 man, okay? This Proverbs 31 man spends his time in the gates not talking about himself. Okay? He's not bragging about his accomplishments. He's not saying, look at me, I'm a hero, I'm this, I'm that, like the other elders in that place might be doing, because he is in a place where he has the ability to be honored in that way. But when people come to honor him, they hear about her. Because his body is not his own, because he's possessed with her. He's possessed with this obsession for his love, his infatuation for him, how impressed he is with her. Okay? He loves to talk about how amazing she is. And this is what a husband should be. And this is what it should look like in my trying to be humble opinion about, chauvinism versus romance. Okay? The romance says, I'm going to praise her. I'm going to lift her up publicly. I'm going to acknowledge the good things that she does, and I'm going to shout it from the rooftops, because that's what we do when we're in love. That's what worship is, right? We have these encounters, these spiritual encounters, heaven meets earth, and then what is the reaction? We want to shout it from the rooftops. This is what it's supposed to be in love, okay? So, going further, okay, he tells his children and teaches them, and so does her example, because of the way this is kind of worded, where it's a little bit ambiguous. So, it says that her children, for this backstory that causes them to do this, rise up to call her blessed. And so my interpretation is that her husband, because he obviously does this in the gates, he should also be doing this at home, as he teaches his children to love their mother through the way that he loves her, and vice versa. So he is constantly lifting her up, constantly praising her, constantly validating her, trusting her, okay? And removing himself willingly, okay, to, and that's the thing, is like a willing choice in something is, I can go down a whole path there, but having the power in self to say, I'm going to lay self down and love this person publicly, or privately in the sense of we're at home, but in front of my children. Like, I'm going to teach them, because ultimately my boys are going to be husbands, my daughters are going to be wives, right? If they find that special someone of in this situation or this teaching, the opposite sex, okay? So if they're gonna find somebody to fall in love with, okay, and we can go into other types of relationships where you can still apply this same logic, but for now we're just staying with guy-girl for the sake of not offending everybody, okay? So what we're teaching them is what they should look for, okay? You're teaching your daughters to be strong. You're teaching them to be independent. You're teaching them that they should be empowered. You're teaching them that they have a voice. You're teaching them all of these things about how valuable they are, not just because of their beauty or their charm or their ability to seduce, okay? Not by their sexuality, but by their ability to partner effectively and to help shoulder and carry that load, and to operate in wisdom, to operate in strength and power, that if the husband is to go to this place to sit and talk to others about how awesome she is, the whole time she is increasing his household. Whether it's through giving him children and generations, which is one type of increase that qualifies her to be called the kingdom, because her walls or her flesh or her body, okay, is able to expand in pregnancy, okay, in promise, and to produce generations that will, in time, become nations in the earth, okay? So with a vision bigger than our own lifetime, that's really where royalty starts to come into play, okay? Kings and queens of a household is not like I'm king of the castle and, you know, this lazy boy is my throne and it's me, me, me. It's we are investing in another generation with a vision bigger than our own lifetime. And we're teaching this generation how to carry this light of romance, this light of love, this light of respect for one another into generations to come, because eventually those will become nations, and those nations will influence and affect the entire earth. Okay? Whereas being in an abusive relationship, right? We talked about that whole your body's not your own being skewed into this teaching of of cruelty, you know, that's going to produce, you know, generations, if they survive, that are going to carry on that toxicity and maybe become preachers of that toxicity from their own pulpits, and instead of healing the world, bring more trouble, distress, and different things into the world, because it's not just you, and it's not just you and that partner. Your children will have partners. There's this whole ascending root system or branches of a tree, you know, that as it expands, what you did in self in your own limited lifetime has an effect that will influence an entire planet in centuries down the road. And that's why it talks about raise them up in the way they should go. Okay? So he teaches his children to praise her, and she's loving him, he's loving her, and these children are being brought up in this respect, and his sons are being raised to know how to respect and honor a mother, a wife, and daughters, and sons. And they're learning how to trust, and how to empower, and how to step back and say, you got this, you know, and how to not try to control every little thing in a relationship, not try to control every little piece of finance, okay? Not to try to increase or control everything about how the house looks, feels, smells, and so on, okay? He empowers her, and then he leaves her alone to do it while praising her the entire time she is doing it behind her back, okay? So you want to know about her. Do you go to her or do you go to him? You go to him, right? Because his body is not his own. And that's a beautiful thing and not a controlling and abusive thing, okay? Now, he also says to her, he says, like, I've got good taste, right? He says, women, there are so many beautiful women. There are so many seductive women. There's basically a field full of flowers. So, like, he isn't just infatuated with only her beauty, right? He recognizes that she is beautiful, but he also recognizes that beauty is not that rare, which is a huge revelation a lot of guys need to get in this day and time. Is, okay, let's say that you own a game show, right? Let's say you own Let's Make a Deal, okay? Or you're in charge of kind of putting things together for that show. And you're like, we need a beautiful woman to hold a suitcase. No, wait, we need 12 or however many they bring out. I don't know, 30. So if this idea that beauty is so rare was true, then that person would have a very hard job to do. But they don't. You know what they do? They get on the phone, they call an agency, and they say, I need 30. And it's on order. It's like ordering a pizza. It is a dime a dozen. It is so not rare for a woman to be beautiful. And if you are a woman who is trying to define your identity through your beauty or your sexuality, okay? Now that's a part of who you are. And it's good to take care of yourself. Hygiene, fitness, dressing well, you want to be beautiful, and that's good. But you cannot root your identity in surface level stuff. Because what he's talking about here, the Proverbs 31 husband, is he's saying, there's all this beauty out here, and I recognize that, but among all the flowers, I found you, okay? Among all these beautiful women, I found you, and your beauty to me surpasses them all. And, beauty and charm is deceptive in the sense of, he's saying like sexuality, seduction, the way you dress, the way you put on perfume, the way you do your hair, the way you post, profile pictures or pictures to Facebook to try to do whatever. Like he's saying, and obviously there was no Facebook back here, but he's saying, out of all of these things that people can do to try to show people their beauty from an outward state, and I know some that if I saw them for the first time, I would think that they were very beautiful, but because I know the spirit, the attitude, okay, of some people who are kind of becoming prominent right now in the mainstream media, who are very attractive, but their character is so vile, it's so hateful, it's so disgusting, and they're getting paid for promoting outrage. And you might know who I'm talking about, and I'm not going to say. But there are a few that are doing this stuff, and now seeing them, I would say that's one of the ugliest people I've ever seen. Not because of their physical attractiveness, but because no one wants to be with a contentious, hate-filled person who is constantly gossiping, constantly promoting outrage, and trying to build their entire character on stirring shit up. Okay? Trying not to curse in these videos, but it's hard. I'll try to make sure it's at least relevant, okay? But, and not to go like a political direction, but there are some people that are out there doing that stuff, okay? So the Proverbs 31 husband says, among all of these, a lot of this beauty, a lot of this sexuality, it's deceptive, right? But among everybody that's beautiful, you are still more beautiful to me, and you're more beautiful on top of your physical beauty, because what you have is you have this light inside of you. You are beautiful, you are intelligent, you are strong, you make good investments, you're blessed and favored. Like what you do produces, and he just begins to say, like, you stand in awe of God. Like, because that's what the word translated fear of God is to stand in awe of God. Okay, so to be in awe is a much better translation because it's not terrorizing. But he says you are in awe of God. And it shows. Like, it shows in what you do. It shows in what you produce. It shows in the way that you conduct your life. Just continues to make me want to be a better person myself. I'm adding a little bit to it, but the character that she has, and the character that he has, and the way that their children respond to this is something where I think we have a very unbalanced message if we remain teaching on the Proverbs 31 woman while neglecting the Proverbs 31 man, because we have a lot of men who are so far removed from this character who expect this character from her. And this is a two-way street, okay? Now, again, a law is cursed. So if you try to do anything because you have to or you're supposed to, it's going to ring false. It's going to be a little bit much. Like, we all know those kind of overly sappy couples, right? Where it rings false and you kind of feel like maybe you're hiding something because you're making such an effort to be heard and seen by other people that I don't know if you're really doing it for that other person or if you're doing it for other people. And I kind of fell into that trap when I first came onto this teaching or started teaching this, because I wanted to be extremely public about how much I love my wife. And I still try to post things or say things regularly, but I try to do it out of I want to. I try to do it out of, more of this is what I want to do than this is what I'm supposed to do. Because when I first started doing it, it did turn into something where I felt like I'm not saying this to her anymore. I'm just saying this to everybody, okay? And it almost sounds like I have something to prove. And so I reined it back, and there still is a lot, but sometimes I feel very inadequate. Sometimes I feel like I'm not saying enough about my wife. And I think about this a lot. Like, am I being like the character described in this passage, this Proverbs 31 man, okay? And there's some things I want to do, like tattoos and stuff, that kind of show this message a little bit more, like kind of become an icebreaker to teach this. Because so many people say no one's teaching this. And it's important. It's so important that we as men step up and empower our wives and become feminists in a lot of ways, And I know that word is just like a curse word to some people, but we need to do it, but we need to do it outside of a law. We need to do it because it's really who we are. We need to do it because it's really our character. And I found that doing it out of my character is not like 24/7, and sometimes I feel like it should be 24/7, and then I start to feel like I'm putting a little bit too much on myself because I start to feel like a failure, okay? But then, we were in a class, and an instructor came from 4 hours away, and in this vast network of people within this type of class that we were in, she got there and called out, how she sees the love that I have for my wife. And then another one came from somewhere similar that had kind of the same vibe and said, you guys are the cutest couple within this whole network or this whole organization. And then, quickly corrected herself to say, like, the top people must be better. But, like, and it's not me just bragging about myself here, but because I don't always feel adequate on this at all. And so it really lifts my spirits when this happens, because then I know people are seeing the genuine and they're praising something that's genuine and not something that I feel obligated to or like I have to do. And in this previous season that's been very, very difficult, it's been harder to sit down and just, go through that in a very poetic way that I want to do. And so it hasn't been what I've wanted it to be recently, just because focuses are so turbulent, with job situations, with trying to start a business, with fires all around us, and being evacuated, and issues with people hating my dog because of its breed. And, it's just been like one thing after the other. And now the fear of my wife possibly going blind, and I'm getting a little bit personal here, but I wanted to talk about the balance is finding it in yourself. The balance is just recognizing it, not forcing it, not judging other people by whether they're doing it or not. You can tell when somebody's doing the opposite, and that's where I think we start to run into some issues. But I did want to get it out here because it is something I think isn't being talked about very much. And I want to make sure that I'm bringing unique content whenever possible as I start this new channel. And I just hope that this helps to set a standard for men, the same way that they're trying to set a standard for women within circles that talk about the Proverbs 31 woman. Okay, I just hope that this helps to plant some seeds and start some healthy conversation around it, and to help bring balance, that when we talk about one, we're also talking about the other, because these two go together, and you can't have one expectation when the other is here and not doing anything to support, empower, or encourage, especially if you've taken away the ability of the woman to build, to invest, to make decisions, to have power, to be fit or strong, or you're insulting her or mocking her or giving backhanded compliments. You know, these are things that need to be aligned. Outside of this book, this just paints a picture and delivers it well. If you don't believe the Bible at all, this principle is true. This principle is what we're after, okay? Even if you're in a homosexual relationship, there's still a mutual respect that needs to take place within that relationship, okay? And a lot of homosexual relationships that I've observed, I feel, do kind of carry a male-female type of vibe, or roles, even though they're both the same gender. It's just we've always attached it to gender, and it's not always gender. There's other words that could probably be used to describe some of these things. And then there's some relationships where those are constantly interchanging, whether it's male-female, whether it's male-male, female-female. But the important thing is that we're empowering each other, trusting each other, loving each other, praising each other at home, in public, and not forgetting that you still have to praise that person privately, so they know that you're not just trying to get something out of it by praising them publicly. Like that you're really doing it for your significant other. So hopefully that helps. Here it is, Proverbs 31 man. Got it in just around 30 minutes. So this might be the shortest one I ever do. Time will tell. I hope that this was beneficial.